Did you have Laura?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just got rid of it. Yeah.
The gelati thing.
It's just been done this and put this here and that. Okay. Yeah. Joe. Yeah.
At the, that my mother was he's temperature and really fussy, he's not eating.
Right.
And he goes to daycare.
Oh.
And so I think like in daycare he has a fever.
Oh,
I'll
right.
see how he's.
Oh, I've been in that world before.
Do they take your temperature?
Yeah, oh, Heidi, yeah, was like at the door.
Well, they don't take, you're not supposed to, if they have a temperature, you're really supposed to supplement.
No, I know.
That's like a no-no.
But yeah, but before they, you know,
Like, it was like, you know.
Yeah, I don't understand.
But now what do they stand at the door, the one who's temperature thing?
yeah, no, that was like part of it.
And Nathan was like sick for a little bit, but no one had like a persistent cough for like 2 weeks. And it got worse. Now he's just like, if he woke up this morning and I could tell he had a breathe, but not all over.
Ew.
I don't have it.
But he's been near you.
Yeah, but like.
I have been exposed, so she has
I
to.
tested, well, I haven't tested. You can't test the baby, they don't.
You stay relatively germ-free when your kids grow up.
I tested baby.
It's crazy. It's so
Or when you're a teacher,
I used to
when
get
you're a teacher, like
teacher.
you have the best immunity because the first like
You get all
year
the
you get
exposure.
sick or you always get all the exposure. And then after that, like the first 2 years, 3 years of being a teacher, you're sick all the time. After that, you're never sick.
Yeah, going with a hazmat suit.
And such.
We should.
I know, but you know what, they're not going to continue it as soon as the exec or the governor, when it's not a state of emergency anymore, that expect. And all the meetings will have to go back to in-person even, because that is not going to protect that. Remember, there's like a way to hold the community. I only have a whole community.
To get that done.
It's that
Everything
everything
like
like that legislation.
that's like.
Four of them. There is legislation, but the legislation, the one that went into session to do full remote.
Yeah, we're the.
Actually, the, it was like a regional body legislation. You would have a regional body. that
If there's a
comes-
regional. district.
No,
Yeah.
if your board is made up of interjurisdictional.
Oh,
Like not, it's not like.
like us.
Yeah, I wanna find out,
We should.
but
Because they have it. There's some tax right there. Sit by the.
Yeah.
there is some legislation.
Yeah, it'll have to be like Wilmington two back.
So the one that
When they come back.
maybe
they-
the governor
two back.
considered is the one that doesn't do public. It's a majority of the forums don't be able to. You're coming
okay.
directly
For them to go in there.
around
It takes 6 months for them to be aware.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
Don't want.
So once that barrier's kind of there.
Then it should be.
So- So.
BYD, their vision.
Right. But there was legislation.
That's in a location like here.
Yeah.
So like one of us gets down at this location, get public credit, and they're here.
I agree. I'm saying, I don't know what
Because you
the.
still have. public access.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's amazing.
Never attack, right?
Yeah, it's better if they participation. Like here. We had that on stage. Sitting. All I could see on the screen. So dark.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to have us together and have our Executive Director, Kate Miller, back from her sabbatical, her vacation. I know we have a couple board members who will be arriving late, but to start with, let's call this meeting to order for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Tax Agency. Today is Wednesday, September 21st, and it's now 1:01 p.m. Let's start with a Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me and stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can't see, but we have a great crowd out here. And so we're saying hello to everybody who's joining us virtually. Next, we have a roll call. Laura, do you mind?
Yes. Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph, Vice Chair, can you hear me? I see
I can
his,
hear you, but maybe you can't hear me?
we can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Chris Canning,
Here.
Gary Kraus,
Here.
Liz Alessio,
Present.
Scott Sedgley, Alfredo Pedroza, Belia Ramos, Paul Doring,
Good afternoon. Here. Thank you.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Here.
John Dunbar,
Here.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Present.
and Doug Weir.
I am here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I was given prior notice to the meeting that Director Pedrosa and Sedgley will be arriving a bit late today. So we look forward to them. On to that item number 4 is adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Not, and I can't see everybody virtually, only see our room. So I'm sorry, I can't see if there's any hands raised.
I can see, not a problem. There are no hands raised.
Okay, very good. So is there a motion and a second to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda, Garcia. Second. Kraus.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. Right now we're at the number 5, which is public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment? And again, this is for the tax authority. Not seeing any.
Yes, I would
moving-
like, yes, excuse me, I would like to make a comment.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. There's a public comment virtually.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is John Glazer. I'm Vice Chair of the Calistoga Green Committee. I'd like to make these comments. The Green Committee of Calistoga recommends that a zero-emission battery-powered shuttle bus be acquired to replace the current gasoline version in Calistoga. The committee recognizes that an appropriate battery-powered shuttle bus that meets Calistoga's needs may not be available right at the moment. But it is likely that a suitable electric bus should be available in the near term, and for far less, for example, than the BYD C6M model. An electric shuttle bus based on the Ford E350 chassis looks nearly identical to the current shuttle, and likely will be tested and approved for FTA funding probably within a matter of months from now. The transition to battery power is obviously accelerating, and appropriate vehicles are coming online fast. NVTA's commitment to battery-powered buses is inspiring to all our committee members, but we do not recommend running Calistoga's current gasoline-fueled shuttle bus for any longer than necessary. We strongly recommend that an appropriate zero-emission shuttle replacement be acquired and put into operation as soon as possible. Now, I personally talked to a couple of shuttle bus vendors and was told that after approval, there will be delays, supply chain delays among them, and it may take as long as 1 to 2 years before the actual delivery can take place. But even if there were a 2-year delay before an electric shuttle can operate in Calistoga, that translates to a future of at least 5 years of clean energy usage in our city over the alternative. What we don't want is to be committed to a gasoline-driven shuttle bus for the next 7 years. We are asking the board to support Calistoga's commitment to clean energy by replacing the current shuttle as soon as one is tested, approved, and available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we agree with you. We're looking forward to the electric buses ourselves. We just had the B bus. I was just had its kind of a ribbon cutting, if you will, yesterday. Director, do you have any feedback, Director Miller, on Calistoga?
Sure. So just also, I'd like to tell the speaker that this is actually the tax agency board agenda that we're going through right now. But in response to your questions, we are working with the city of Calistoga to introduce a zero emission vehicle there. The biggest challenge that we have is that there are certain areas in the city that the larger vehicles cannot reach. And so there are no current smaller vehicles that are electric that are eligible for public agency acquisition that can provide that service. So we are hoping that that gets resolved pretty quickly. That has to do with the Federal Transit Administration approving the kind of vehicles that we'd like to use. So stay tuned. We are working in that direction.
Thank you,
Okay,
Director Miller. And I
thank
can
you.
see we have Director with his hand up, Canning with his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much, John, for your work on the Green Committee. But we have also informed our constituents, while the NVTA did go through great efforts to find an electric solution for us because of the specifically our mobile home parks, where we have a vulnerable population and a great utilizer of the service. What's currently available in the market logistically can't work, but the NVTA, as the director just said, is still looking at other options, but we had to pull the trigger on this particular shuttle, otherwise would be without that service for a period of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Canning. And I know this is public comment, and we often don't respond to public comment, and we're doing this during the tax authority meeting. So just want to make that clear. We're making special exceptions. But thank you again, John, for your comments there. Are there any other public comments at this time? Not seeing any. Okay. So let's move on to item number 6, chairpersons and board members update. Any updates from the board members on the tax authority? Not seeing any. Very good. Moving on to the consent item. Do any board members wish to pull any items from the consent agenda? Not seeing any hands. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Joseph.
Thank you.
I'll second Dunbar as long as there's no public comment.
Thank you. And I don't see any public comment. Thank you very much. Laura, would you go ahead and move forward with a roll call?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph, Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Aye.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is public hearing. I hereby open item 8-1, 8.1, public hearing. The time is 1:10. Staff is seeking approval of this item, which is resolution number 22-07-TA, amending fiscal year 2021 annual operating budget. And Antonio Honorado is going to present this to us, pages 15 through 18.
Put it to the second slide. Great. So good afternoon, Chair Licio and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I am the Director of Finance here for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. For this item, staff is asking the board to approve resolution 22-07-TA, which is in attachment number 1, amending the fiscal year 21-22 annual operating budget and the associated annual appropriation limit from the current $23 million to $25 million. So this is more or less a bookkeeping item. Last year around this time, staff forecasted Measure T revenues to come in at around $23 million, and the pass-through amount expenditures as well as the appropriation limit of the same amount. As such, the board approved a revision to the budget of up to $23 million from an original budget of around $18 million, but that was a pre-pandemic budget. So at the time, the budget reflected growth of at a little over 12%. Thought at the time reflected consumer demand would level off and Measure T would still experience some, but modest growth. Well, as you are aware, probably in your own jurisdictions, economic activity roared back to a level of 21% over the previous year. So this good problem presents a budgetary issue. It's a technicality for that fact. The pass-through appropriation to the jurisdictions was up to 23 million. And actuals came in at 24.8 million, which is why staff is asking for a budget adjustment to post the revenues and the pass-through funds to the jurisdictions by increasing the appropriation limit. This slide that you see shows a history of Measure T since its inception. As you can see, the fiscal 21-22 budget assumed growth of around 12.5%, which we always budget a little bit higher so we don't run into these technical situations like we have in front of us today. Although this is great news, although 21% is spectacular news, I did want to caution that 21% growth is extraordinary. And staff does not assume this type of growth is normal, nor do we forecast growth to be anywhere near this level. Staff plans for growth usually around 8 to 10% annually on average, based upon the current economic situation and any mounting warning signs on the horizon. 8% growth is still considered high, but given the growth in economic activity around the valley, this growth rate does seem warranted. We don't know how long this growth spurt will continue, and staff will, of course, report to the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, as well as this board on a regular basis. So the action in front of you is to approve the resolution to increase the appropriation limit so the jurisdictions can get their funding for Measure T. With that concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Antonio. So this is a one-time gift. Don't get spoiled. Don't expect it in the future. But this is great. So we'll see. Does anybody have any questions? And I don't see the gallery here. Any questions by board members? Do we have any members of the public that wish to ask a question? Oh, I see board member Ellsworth. Director Ellsworth?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate the presentation. Just a little clarification in terms of, as you're saying, one-time gift. So this is in addition to our yearly, how does this work in terms of structure?
I can answer that question, Director Ellsworth. So I mean, I think a gift is more as this was an unexpected consequence of the economic activity recently for Measure T receipts. So this is above and beyond what we thought Measure T revenues would come in at. And so it's celebratory. It's a windfall, but it's not expected to continue for the foreseeable future. So what it really means is the jurisdictions are getting a lot more than what we predicted. And the jurisdictions, it's up to jurisdictions to plan accordingly in regards to their projects and to see if they can accelerate some of their projects on their Measure T lists.
Excellent. Just one follow-up in terms of disbursement. So timing wise, how does this roll into the municipalities?
Actually, the good news is the disbursements have already occurred. The county of Napa, which is responsible for the disbursements to the jurisdictions, that has already occurred. This is just simply an accounting treatment. So this allows these disbursements to be posted to our general ledger for auditing purposes. That was just a missing element because the appropriation was at 23 million, but we're coming in closer to 25 million. This allows the accruals to post appropriately. And so we're compliant with our Measure T ordinance as well as our accounting treatment of those revenues.
Thank you.
I would just also like to clarify too, Mayor, that these are what we think the projected amount for this fiscal year is going to come in. And we wanted to make sure that the limit of our appropriations was set at a place that as those revenues come in, the jurisdictions would be able to receive those funds. So that's the purpose of this. So they're coming in, the projections are coming in about $2 million higher than what we initially anticipated or most recently anticipated. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so we do need the board to approve this amendment, this adjustment, and these additional revenues that are anticipated from Measure T. Are there any other questions by board members? Any other directors? Is there a motion and a second to approve this recommendation? Thank you.
Second, Garcia.
You second, Joseph?
Was Leon, I was just questioning, did we have any public comment or did?
There are no public comment.
Oh, okay.
There's no public comment. So we do have a. Okay, and then roll call, please, Laura.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi.
Yeah.
And John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to item number 9, regular agenda items. Which is preliminary fiscal year 2021, Measure T financial update and January, March analysis. Roxanne is going to be presenting this. This is pages 19 through 31.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I'm Roxana Marati, Senior Financial Analyst, presenting this item. And in slide 1, navigate, please. That is the total sales tax received, and it's straight Measure T revenue at 24.8 million for this past fiscal year. It's inclusive of the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration's cost of administration. And this is when including interest earned, the total increases to about 24.82 million. So that's the number that you saw on Antonio's presentation. And slide 2 shows all the Measure T revenues by month received in fiscal year 22 and since the inception of the sales tax. The period covering the fourth quarter of fiscal year 22, April April through June saw the most sales tax revenue compared to the other 3 quarters of this past fiscal year. And next slide, please. Actually, sorry, can you go back? Thank you. This view shows Measure T revenues generated quarterly since the measure took effect. Okay. Throughout the life of the measure thus far, Q3 has brought in the least amount of sales tax revenues compared to the other quarters. And you can see that in the gray column since fiscal year 2019. Next slide, please. This slide shows Measure T revenues annually since the measure took effect. These are in nominal dollars, and fiscal year 22 has brought in the most revenue despite the pandemic. Even when accounting for inflation, FY 22 has still brought in more revenue compared to 2021. Moving on to the HDL sales tax analysis for the period of January through March 2022, known as fiscal year Q3 or calendar year Q1, as the HDL reports reported. In attachment 1, the most Measure T tax revenue generation came from fine dining, casual dining, and fueling stations. While there is still pent-up demand for dining and hospitality experiences, price increases are a bigger driver for the increase in sales tax generation. For the most part, price increases are a result of inflation as well as labor shortages. Fueling station prices also began to surge in Q3 due to restricted fuel supplies from the Russia-Ukraine crisis, capped out refining capacity, and continuous demand for fuel and travel. And hopefully that helps answer Director Ellsworth's question as well. HDL predicts that these price hikes will persist through the calendar year, with some slowing in the beginning of 2023. E-commerce sales were relatively stable, with more gains in used motor sales due to restricted supply of new vehicles, wineries, businesses, and industries, discount department stores, among others. And in the last attachment, you will see the County Auditor Controller's Measure T report that breaks out the revenue and expense disbursements. As Antonio reported, all jurisdictions should have received their final disbursements for the fiscal year, and we'll work on the budget adjustment next. So with that, I conclude my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Roxana. And this is an informational only item.
Correct.
But do we have any questions from any of our directors? If I could see the gallery. Not seeing any questions. Do we have any questions from the public or comments from the public? Nothing? Very good. Thank you, Roxana, for this information. Moving on to item 10 is future agenda items. Any future agenda items for the tax authority? Not seeing any. Therefore, I go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 1:23 of the NVTA-TA. Our next meeting will be on October 19th, 2022. Okay, we're moving on to our next meeting. This is the Napa Valley Transportation Authority regular meeting, Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, starting at 1:23. I call this meeting to order. Laura, would you please go through roll call?
Roll call was confirmed at the preceding NVTA-TA meeting with 1 absence for this meeting today.
Okay, thank you very much. So item number 3 is adoption of the agenda. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda?
I'll make that motion, Joseph.
Second, Pedrosa.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
See, there he is.
Alfredo Pedrosa,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yeah.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We have Director Sedgley attending, so we have him on our roll call. Moving on to number 4, public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment? I see we have a hand up. Kara Werner.
Sorry, just trying to get unmuted. Good afternoon, Chair Alessio and directors of NVTA. I wanted to say hello very quickly. I'm Kara Werner with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, and I just wanted to alert you to a couple of safe routes to school events that are coming up within the next month or so. Our countywide walk and roll to school day is on October 12th, and so far we have 20 schools signed up to participate in that, so we're quite excited. And we are starting a series of safety summits at 7 schools around the county. Our first will be in American Canyon on the 27th. These are for parents at the schools to discuss safe routes, to learn a little bit about the barriers and what can be done about them, and to help promote the benefits of walking and riding to school. Those will be posted on our website as we schedule them. I think we have 3 scheduled so far. We'll also be back in October to do a full presentation to you about our walk audit reports that were published this past spring. I also just wanted to mention one hazard that a member has notified us of in St. Helena. It's along 29 where Caltrans is doing repaving work, and it's on the west side. So if you're coming from Calistoga to St. Helena, it's going to be on your right. It's about at the St. Helena sign, but basically there's a large drainage ditch there. And for bicyclists, there's really no way to see it until you're right upon it. And it's a bit like, if you don't see it and you hit it, it's a bit like running straight into a curb. So we've been reaching out to Caltrans to try and see if there's a way that we could at least warn people of that, maybe put some flexi posts around that and just call it out. It could also be a problem for drivers if they pulled over there, but since it's so close to the sign, it's probably not going to. That's probably not going to happen, but it really does jump up at bicyclists. So we're hoping that to hear from Caltrans about what they might be able to do about that, and any support you might be able to lend would be welcomed. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. By chance, I don't know if this is appropriate, but did you call the highway patrol to maybe, I don't know if the highway patrol can do something to mark that in the interim?
We
No?
would, Amani's here and she's taking notes, and
Okay.
and she's from Caltrans. So
Yeah.
your message was loud and clear. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you. And I see Director Ellsworth, he has his hand up.
Yes,
Your hand
thanks, Mayor. Jeff Ellsworth here from St. Helena. Thank you for bringing this forward, and any way that we in St. Helena can be helpful in moving this forward to getting what we need there, so that cyclists feel supported and protected there. So please do loop us in as well, and we'll do everything we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ellsworth. Are there any other public comments? Not seeing any. We'll move on to item number 5, chairpersons, board members, MTC, and ABAG. Are there any updates from board members? I see Director Dunbar.
Yeah, I'm sure Kate was going to reference this, but I wanted to thank all of our NVTA team and others that brought the beeline to Yountville. Electric vehicles were brought up in our previous meeting, but it was about 4 years in the making and several $100,000 in the making to put our new electric vehicle online in Yountville. I know we have, I think we purchased 6 of them, and they're being deployed throughout the county over a period of time. So thank you for allowing us to transition to zero emission vehicle in Yountville, and I know it's coming elsewhere in the county.
We look forward to hearing more public testimony on the success of the Beeline, Mayor Dunbar. I note that Director Pedrosa also has an update for us.
Thank you, Chair Alessio. So just an MTC update. Some of you might have seen the news. Our Executive Director, Therese McMillan, has decided to retire. She has been an incredible gift to the region. She joined MTC in a time when there was a lot happening, and to have her leadership and experience at the federal level, state level, and at MTC, she contributed quite a bit to our region, but also got to know Napa personally and made some key investments in our region. So we wish her the best. This is an opportunity for her to enjoy life. And again, if you get to see her, just thank her for her service. These are difficult jobs in this moment, and to have dedicated people like her come back to MTC was a gift, and we're going to miss her. At that time, as chair of MTC, we are also looking at her replacement. And I've convened the executive committee to start talking about what options we have. So more news to share on that front. But again, what an incredible opportunity also to look for the next leader of the region in a time when there's so much to do for our region. But again, we're a great region. It's how do we build from it to continue to do more. On the network management business case advisory group, I provided updates to the authority regarding what we've been doing. We've been meeting with the operators to also provide the confidence that we acknowledge there are some financial difficulties, some financial pressures that operators might be facing, but we cannot walk back from the commitments we made around, fair integration, wayfinding, mapping, bus transit priority, network management, and connected network. As chair of MTC, we're still very committed to that, but also do it in a way that it brings our operators with us. And the reason we're doing this is to increase ridership and create better ridership experience for those that use public transit. On OBAC 2, a quick straight program, the Program and Allocations Committee did approve referring to the Commission an extended deadline for funds under the Quick Strike Program. Some of you might remember that we were eligible and we were recommended for $8 million out of that pot for some of the projects that we are looking at and studying, including the roundabout at 29 in Oakville and some other improvements in those areas. But again, those were outside funding opportunities that both myself and Director Miller were able to advocate for our region to try to bring more resources into our Napa Valley. Those programs are dubbed under Napa Valley Forward Program. And Chair Leslie, I believe that is it. Happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you, Director Pedrosa. Moving on, I see Director Garcia has his hand raised. I believe he's next.
Yes, thank you. Reporting on ABAG, Executive Board had an item this past week on Proposition 30. You may have seen the advertisements on TV. It's a proposal is a 1.75 tax increase on persons with income above 2 million for 3 years to raise funds for zero emission vehicles and charging infrastructure, 80% for zero emission vehicles, 20% for fire response and prevention. Very robust conversation. The aye votes were 11, no was 6, abstentions was 4. So the matter was voted to approve and move forward with that, with our recommendation.
Thank you for that update, Director Garcia. And moving on to, I believe next is Director Ellsworth.
Thank you. I wanted to echo Director Dunbar in giving thanks to NVTA. We'll be regarding electric vehicles, shuttles. The shuttle, we'll be doing our ribbon cutting tomorrow in St. Helena, 10 a.m. at Crane Park. And want to be supportive of all our jurisdictions being able to move forward in this way, and just want to express gratitude. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Joseph.
Yes, this is a board member comment. I just got a little late. Wanted to highlight this Sunday, September 25th at the American Canyon Walmart between 1 and 4 p.m. We're having an electric mobility event where we'll have one of the electric buses will be there, EVs. I think Supervisor Ramos's car will be there, amongst others. So it's an opportunity to learn what EVs can be and do, and talk to the owners. And so I encourage everybody to come on down, do a little shopping, and check out what's happening with electric mobility in American Canyon.
Excellent. Thank you. And Director Ramos, did everybody take your storm? Director Ramos? We see you. We don't hear
My
you.
apologies. I have very, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. My apologies. I have very bad Wi-Fi reception. I just did want to give an update for ABAG that I had a meeting this morning with President Aradine, and we will be convening a special workshop for ABAG representatives on October 28th in the morning. I don't have the exact time, but this meeting is going to be to speak candidly about the structural deficit that we have at ABAG and how we are going to plan in the short term and in the long term for addressing this. So for those that are ABAG representatives, I very much encourage you to participate. This does affect all of your jurisdictions and our dues. So I would hope that we can have someone at each of the jurisdictional levels be present at that meeting. Again, it'll be the morning of October 28th.
Thank you very much, Director Ramos. I see no other committee board member updates. We're on to item number 6, Executive Director update.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody. I'd like to introduce NVTA's newest employee, Grant Bailey. Grant, if you just wave your hand. Grant is a licensed civil engineer and most recently oversaw federally funded capital improvement projects as a supervising engineer with the City of Santa Rosa Public Works Department. He also teaches 2 courses at Santa Rosa Junior College. Junior College's Engineering and Applied Technology Department. Grant has extensive experience in both private and public sector transportation projects. And Grant holds a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering from Cal Poly. He lives in Santa Rosa with his wife and 2 children, and we're thrilled to have him as our new engineering manager. So welcome, Grant. I'm happy to announce that in August, NVTA was awarded a $6.3 million low-no grant for 6 zero-emission buses by the Federal Transit Administration. I'd like to acknowledge Antonio Honorato and Roxana Marati for securing that grant. So congrats, you two, and thank you so much for the work you do. On Tuesday, as was mentioned yesterday, we had a really nice ribbon cutting for the new Yountville B electric bus. It will be known as the B, and the trolley is going away. So it's the B line, it's all the buzz. It's a nice little 30-foot bus, all bright and yellow with a B on it. And tomorrow, as was mentioned by Mayor Ellsworth, that we are going again to do a ribbon cutting for the St. Helena butterfly bus. It will still be known as the St. Helena shuttle, but it does have a butterfly on the outside, sort of to indicate what we are doing as a team to help the environment. The event will be at 10 o'clock, as mentioned, in Crane Park. So I look forward to seeing those of you who are interested to participate in that ribbon cutting event. On September 25th, there is an electric mobility event where NVTA will be showing another electric bus. The event is being held at the Walmart in American Canyon from 1 to 4 p.m. The Imola Park and Ride ribbon cutting is scheduled for October 13th at 10 a.m. The Imola Park and Ride is located on Golden Gate Avenue, just south of Imola. So that's a big deal. That project was about a year-long project, almost. And we welcome everybody participating in that event. And then I also wanted to recognize, and she's going to do an in-person Caltrans report, but our new project manager, Amani Melaji. Amani, if you just raise your hand. Not yet. I'm not quite done. So there's right after I'm done, though, when the chair says so. She is replacing Ricky Gao, who replaced Kelly. So we'll probably always know her as the new Kelly, because Kelly was around for so long. But welcome, Amani, and we look forward to working with you. And finally, I would like to acknowledge Danielle Schmitz for filling in for me while I was away on an extended 1-month vacation. I never heard a peep from her other than a text message responding to my complaints about the delay in getting remote access, where she said, well, you shouldn't be looking at your email when you're on vacation anyway.
She's right.
So thank you, Danielle, for the work that you do. And thank you, everybody. It sounds like everybody kind of showed up and did their jobs, and it wasn't a surprise to me, but well done. And that concludes my report.
It's a great report, and definitely there's a great team here at NVTA. Welcome, Grant and Armani, to this team. And so moving on, this is appropriate. Caltrans does have an update for us, don't we? We get to see you and hear from you directly. So come on up. You're a new best friend.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Amani Miligi. I'm the Regional Project Manager from Caltrans proposed and responsible for the Napa County projects. Going through the updates for Caltrans projects for this month, we have 6 projects that in the project initiation document phase. One of them is a safety project, which is on various locations in the county of Napa. 2 of them are pavement rehabilitation projects in Napa State Route 29, and 2 major damage projects in Napa 121 and Napa 29. And lastly, 1 multimodal corridor improvements project in the city of American Canyon. For the environmental projects, most of them now have been shifted to design phase, luckily. So we have just 5 projects in the environmental phase. One of the updates is related to a project, which is the Toloke Creek Bridge replacement in Napa 121. The draft environmental document has been completed in the end of June, and it is planned and targeted to complete the PEED, which is the environmental phase, by the end of this year. Going to page 2 out of 5. On the design projects, we have 15 projects. Update on the EA3Q760. This is Arambil Stripes projects in Napa 29, 121, and 128 in various locations in the county of Napa with a construction capital cost of 3.3 million. The PSNE is targeted to be completed by November of this year. Going to page number 3 of the 5. The second is a drainage improvement project in Napa 29 in the city of American Canyon with a construction capital cost of 3.3 million. The RTL is targeted by the end of this month, and the CCA is in November 2025. For the construction of Class 1 bicycle and pedestrian undercrossing projects, this is 4Q000, the RTL was completed in July 22, and the CCE is in December 23. Page 4 out of 5. Lastly, the project 4J830, this is a Hopper Slough Creek project. The PED milestone has been completed in the end of June 2022 and proceeded with the PSNE phase, which is targeted to be completed on 2024. For construction projects, we have 11 projects, and as presented on the screen, most of them are going into track. For the Soskol junction projects, the percentage of completion is 13%, and the CCA will be in December 2025. By this, I conclude my report and willing to receive any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report and the update. Do we have any questions by any of our board members, any of our directors? Not seeing any. Do we have any public comment? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're on to item number 8, presentations. This is a project update that Danielle Schmidt and Rebecca Schenk is going to present to us.
Thank you, Chair Licio and members of the board. My name is Rebecca Schenk, and I am the program manager here for public transit. I'll be giving you an update on the first 2 projects, and then I'll turn it over to Danielle. Oh, yep, you had it there. Anyway, so the first project I'm going to be talking about today is the Vine Trail project, which you're all very familiar with, from St. Helena to Calistoga, and it's construction season, so it's been quite busy there. So on the next slide, what you'll see is some milestones that we hit since we maybe last spoke on project updates. So we did do the notice to proceed, which was effective on June the 30th, and then construction started on July 5th in Calistoga. We're essentially working from north to south. We also got our county flood control permit finalized for our crossing over the Dunawheel Lane over the Napa River. And then Caltrans signed the maintenance agreement with the city of St. Helena to set us up long-term there. So that was some good milestones, but then also a lot of issues and risks as we came along. So we've heard us talk about before as a risk was the realignment across the Cal Fire property. We do have an agreement in place now, basically with Caltrans on a final design, and we're working to execute change order number 1, and I expect that in the next day or two. So that seems to be mitigated to a certain extent. Next thing we have, and that's been the biggest thing, has been the project coordination. So you heard, for example, Kara Werner speak earlier, and she had mentioned about, some bicycle issues along the way. So in that case, that's part of the Caltrans project, right? The paving project that's happening basically on the same exact stretch of 29. So from Pratt Avenue up to Lincoln Avenue in Calistoga. So we're always coordinating with them. In the case of the incident Kara had referred to, that's on the opposite side of the highway from us. So this time, you know what I mean? It's Caltrans, but it's requiring really constant coordination with their paving project. They are paving overnight, and then we start work in the morning at that 7 a.m. timeframe. So right now that coordination just looks like making sure they put in their final paving lines in the spaces where we need them to be, so that they don't put them in, say, and then a few weeks later, right, we come in and do our paving on top of that and move the lines and kind of leave us with a ghost line scenario. So we're working on that, and their project paving in the areas where we need it will be occurring next week. And then the other big thing is project coordination with PG&E on their gas line. And so that's really been our biggest project challenge that we did not anticipate. How it was supposed to work in our memorandum of understanding with PG&E is they were supposed to vacate their old line in no later than May of 2022 and move to their old line. So that really worked well for us, and then that new line, right, is new, it's deep, and we know where it is, but that's not what we're dealing with. Their old line is still out there and is the functional line, and that is old. They don't know exactly where it is. It's brittle and it is shallow. And so what we have done from period basically August 5th for a 3-week period, we were shut down, and then we worked on potholing that gas line. So potholing, not like the pothole in the road, is Osman and I had this discussion earlier, but potholes as it relates to finding exactly where that gas line is and the size of that gas line, so you don't break that gas line. And so that's been a big project delay for us. And we're just now getting to the point where we're clearing up and going to work in what we call reaches 6 through 4, which is basically from Dunawheel Lane down to Bothay State Park. So that's been a challenge. And then archaeological discoveries. We've had 10 archaeological discoveries along the trail thus far. Most of them were in areas where we already knew that we would potentially find something and were designated with the State Historic Preservation Office. But we did have one new discovery, and we had to do an agreement with Paleo West to do that testing. So on the next slide here, you'll see kind of our pending change orders, and then these are executed, but this is what we see coming down the line. It looks more positive right now than I think it's going to be in the long term. But our first two, because of the Cal Fire crossing and the fact that we are not relocating their driveway at their request, we have some savings there. We're removing the shelter in Calistoga because as it had been bid out, we originally had the Calistoga shelter further south along the trail, and the city of Calistoga now wants to put that shelter kind of behind the Calistoga depot. It will be a separate project from this. So we've taken that out and kind of some of the corresponding work associated with that. We also have planning to remove some tree mitigation. So not to say that we're not going to do the tree mitigation, but as opposed to Gelati purchasing a set of trees, we've been working closely with RCD and Napa County on identifying locations and working with them to grow potentially from acorns the type of stock that they think will best survive in Napa County and placing it on public land. So that also helps us in the negative category. And then on the opposite side of the coin, right, we've had some extra utility adjustments. We keep discovering things along the way, maybe a vault for an AT&T that we didn't know about, something that needs to be raised to grade so you don't have a trail, right, and your utility down here. So there are various utility adjustments. There's been an adjustment to the Dunawheel Lane Bridge East abutment in order to get that bridge out of the ordinary high water mark in the floodplain. So we had to make that adjustment. And then the PG&E delays that I talked about and the need to do the gas line potholing, that's kind of a tentative number. We know what it's costing us per day to do that potholing work. And we will be going to PG&E to kind of make a case for a reimbursement. We'll see what happens on that front, but that's on our radar. We're doing some additional underground work in Calistoga, again, to make the trail and say the fire hydrants all work in tandem. And then there's just a kind of an engineering change to the Deconic Bridge. So those are kind of the pending change orders. The other things that kind of happen on the contract, kind of outside of the construction area, is Middletown Rancheria, that we're going to be using our 20% contingency to bring that contract up to its full $60,000 amount, and that they had to be out there for any ground disturbance work, and potholing constituted ground disturbance. So they've been out there more than anticipated. And as I mentioned, Paleo West, they had to do a post-review discovery plan for that new archaeological finding that we had at that cost of $18,000. So that's our big things on the Vine Trail. Going to the next slide just kind of shows you what our budget was. That has not changed since we brought this item originally to you in March. And then on the next slide, what it'll talk to you about is just where we are. So this is just progress payments through the end of July. So that first month of work where we were much more productive than say in August when we had to do potholing, but it just says that basically we did 8.6% essentially of our payments and about 8.8% of our working days. So just the idea that those line up. But I think when you see this report in a few months and you look at our productivity in August, it would be quite low. I think that's all I have on the Vine Trail. I guess good news on the Calistoga front, since they are not in conflict with the PG&E gas line. It looks like we will be paving the portion in Calistoga to get you from Lincoln Avenue to the ball field no later than 9:30. So that just brings you to next Thursday. So they will then have a continual path from Calistoga down to Dunawheel Lane. Right. We'll go on to the next project, which is the maintenance facility, much less interesting, I guess, on some level there. So that project, as you recall, right, is to build a new maintenance facility. That's our budget and our funding sources. Again, no real change there. On the next slide, what you'll see is similar to the list of change orders. The change order list is a little long to fit at this point onto the slide to detail them out. We basically have $217,000 in approved change orders to date, and then about $111,000 in pending change orders. And some of the big things on the pending front, and maybe the biggest potential delay we've seen thus far in the project, is getting switchgear that's really specialized because of the amount of electrical infrastructure and electrical power we really need there in the future for our electric bus charging. So we have the order in for that switchgear, but kind of delays in that and some additional cost escalations are what are pending right now. Other big things happening on that project is we're still working through our communications and audio video system. And then we have a separate RFP out right now with bids due on October the 3rd for a solar array system that will go on that nice roof when it's done. And so you'll be seeing that coming up at the October board meeting, I believe, for approval. And then on the next slide, in the same way we did on the Vine Trail, but you're much further along on the maintenance facility project, it just shows that your progress payments to date are about 38%, but your working days are further ahead at about 42%. And I think we basically attribute to the fact that the work we've been doing thus far in the maintenance facility, like when you look at the operations building there, is all underground work, right? And that sometimes can be quite slow. But now that we're going vertical, like you saw in the prior picture that's more up to date, I think our costs will start to more closely align with our working days out there. And then going on to the next project here that I'll be talking about, and everyone's been talking about thus far, is just NVTA's commitment to replacing its diesel fleet with electric buses. We have received 6 to date, 5 BYD manufactured buses, which you see there, the B, which in Yountville, and then the Butterfly, which will be celebrating in St. Helena tomorrow. And we have 5 of kind of those animal themed buses. And then we have 2 40-foot buses from Proterra that just arrived last week. And then in addition to that, we have, as Director Miller mentioned in her update, we recently received a LONO grant, and we had received a bus and bus facilities grant. So that will give us roughly $14 million in new grant funding to purchase 14 additional buses. Kind of the caveat there is, can't buy those new buses until the maintenance facility is done so I can charge them. So we have to just make sure that charging aligns with buses. And I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you very much. Those are great updates.
Next slide. Great. Thank you. So the Imola Avenue Park and Ride improvements are at State Route 29 and 121 Imola for the public and board members recollection. These improvements are going to add bus lanes, as you can see there in the bottom left right-hand corner of the picture. There's a bus lane there, and we will have bus stops and facilities to board and alight passengers quickly on the routes 29, which is the regional route that goes down to El Cerrito del Norte, as well as the 11X express route that goes to the Vallejo Ferry. This project is very close to completion. We have a ribbon cutting date of October 13th at 10 a.m., formal invitation to follow. If you go to the next slide, the board would recall that they approved an additional budget of $55,000 to OC Jones for this project. And that was to do safety improvements that were acknowledged by Caltrans when we were going through our punch list, and we have walk audits with Caltrans, as well as the public actually reached out to the project team on this. The northbound off-ramp, there was some concern because there has been some recent head-on collisions on 29, not related to this project specifically, but there's just been some concern from the public about making sure that the traveling public knows that that off-ramp, even though there's a bus island and a bus lane there, that it's not a two-way roadway there and it's one way. So there are existing do not enter one-way signage at the base of the northbound off-ramp. We're putting additional signage further up. We're also putting a no left-hand turn on Imola headed west. We're also putting in reflectors, red reflectors, to alert drivers that they are going the wrong way on the off-ramp. So those are some additions that we'll be making between now and October 13th, and we invite the board to come to this exciting ribbon cutting. Next slide. Sosco Junction project, to remind the board, this project, NVTA did lead the design phase, but after the design phase, we turned it back over to Caltrans to lead the construction. So Caltrans has a whole construction team, construction manager, project team that's working on this project, as well as Gelati Construction is the successful contractor that won the bid. They are keeping us informed of any progress on the project. We have weekly meetings with them. So just to remind everyone, we had a groundbreaking ceremony in late June. We did delay in earnest the starting of construction on this project because of nesting birds. We did have to delay about 3 weeks, I believe. And so we started in later July with construction. If you go out there now, you see the K-rail up, a lot of earthwork and movement. Last Thursday, we did close down the northbound 29 left-hand turn lane onto Sosco Ferry Road. This is because of they're doing a temporary southbound. What they're working on now is a temporary southbound lane on 29 so that they can then shift traffic and start more construction on the roundabouts and the overpass. The project's only about 13% complete. We've expended a little bit over $3 million. And the change orders and risks, are the same. We're early in construction, so we have to go through another season of construction. So nesting birds, cultural artifacts, weather, materials, supply, and costs are all going to be concerns to this project, but I have high confidence in the team. Next slide. SR 29, so State Route 29, American Canyon multimodal and operational improvements. These are between Napa Junction Road and American Canyon Road in American Canyon. We are wrapping up. So we have submitted the project initiation document to Caltrans. And so we are hopeful to have a certified PID document in a few weeks. And also in tandem to that, NVTA has applied for environmental funding for this project to go through the environmental phase through the One Bay Area grant. And we will know if we're successful in that by the end of the year. And we are taking 2 alternatives through the environmental document. The first is the more multimodal transit forward alternative, putting queue jumps at the traffic signals, class 1 facilities on both sides of the highway there. enhanced crossing and beautification along the highway. And the second is a lot of those same beautification and multimodal improvements, but roundabouts at the intersections. And NVTA will continue to pursue discretionary funding to get this project come to fruition. Next slide. Kind of at the other end geographically of the spectrum from the South County improvements, we have the North County improvements for SR 29. So this is what we deemed, and as Supervisor Pedroza talked about earlier, the Napa Valley Forward project. We did receive $8 million from the Quick Strike funding from MTC, which we are currently using to get through the environmental phase of the project. NVTA staff has been working with the project team as well as local property owners to get right of entry, to do cultural and environmental studies along the corridor. And we are continuing to pursue discretionary grant funding sources to get the remainder of the funds for this project. We have about a $15 million shortfall. Next slide. The Imola Corridor Complete Streets Improvements. This is an exciting project. We did a corridor plan that actually was the basis for Caltrans to receive $5 million in SHOP Complete Streets funding. If you go to the next slide, you will see in that center segment for between Jefferson and Saskell, NVTA is applying in partnership with the city of Napa and the county of Napa for active transportation funding that we should know if we're successful or not by the end of next month for the east and west segments, or and the end of next month would be the state ATP funds. And if we're not successful there's still a chance at the regional ATP funds, which we would know by the end of the year. And we applied for about $15 million. Caltrans is planning on doing their construction in the center segment in 2024, I believe. Next slide. And we are still part of the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, the SR 37. This is the interim project. So the part of the project that's between the Raceway and Mare Island. Again, this is adding additional lane and HOV toll lane. We have a draft environmental document. We plan on certifying the final environmental document by the end of this year and securing funding for the environmental phase, which would be the next phase of the project. So that is on track. It's about a $430 million project, and there's a lot of entities working to make this project come to fruition, including MTC and Caltrans. And we are going to go after some discretionary funding under SB1 Solutions for a Congested Corridor this round. Next slide. And then the ultimate project is also just reached a milestone in that the planning and environmental linkages phase of the project, which is what we call the PEL, is a precursor document to the environmental phase. They went through this year-long process where they brought together all the regulatory agencies, environmental agencies, Caltrans, all the transportation agencies, MTC, and they went through this analysis of where the ultimate alignment for the project should be. And there was about 8 or 9 alignments. Some of them went all the way up Highway 12, 116, which, you know, Kate and I would vociferously say like, no, that's not a good idea. VMT is going to be an issue. They had additional bay crossing. And so they've gone through this whole process and analysis, and they have now decided that the ultimate alignment should be where the current alignment is. So, but we had to do the process to get the regulatory and environmental groups on board in the sense that they had to be brought into the conversation. And so now we can move to the environmental phase of the project. And it is looking promising to get funding for the environmental phase of the ultimate project, which is $60 million. And Caltrans is very motivated now that we've gone through this PEL process to, you know, bring the funding to the table. So we will keep you updated on that as well. And I think that concludes our report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Very informative and exciting on many fronts. If I could see the gallery of our board, and I see that we have a hand raised by Director Dunbar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, an amazing list of major projects. There's so much happening. It's very impressive. I know we're at different levels of funding and stages of project, but a lot going on to manage our transportation challenges. Two in particular, I want to call out the Imola Park and Ride and the Soskel Junction. First, thank you to NVTA staff. I reached out after hearing from a couple local Yountville residents that had put the two fatal accidents together and wondered if there was any safety concern there, because we had them within a matter of weeks. And thank you for the additional analysis and even additional safety elements. It's hard to stop impaired drivers if that was the case in those two incidents, but additional warnings and other deterrents to go the wrong way certainly are welcome. At the risk of it looking cluttered, I think we have to worry about safety, but thank you for getting on that right away. Soskel Junction, it seems like it's moving very quickly. It's been very impressive how much earth is being moved and the early stages. I'm curious about the timeline as we get into the winter months. Do they have the ability to continue working, or do they need to pause? I know that I think the individual jurisdictions, we have limits on what can happen underground and to ground, digging and things like that when we get into the winter months. Does this project depend on that kind of scheduling as well?
I would say most likely. I don't know if Grant or Oz have any insight on construction, but yeah, there's just some things that can't be done if there's inclement weather. That's all built into the schedule. So it's a two season construction schedule. I do know that any of the larger lane shifts and inconveniences to the traveling public are not going to happen until spring timeframe of next year. So really looking at March and April of 2023. So I can bring our next project update. I can bring a kind of construction phasing overview for the Soskel Junction project. But I did ask Chris Moulton, who's the construction manager, specifically, like, when is the largest impact going to happen for the traveling public? And he said probably not until next spring.
Yeah, last thought on that also, I've noticed a good amount of public outreach about the closures and delays. I just wanted to recognize that. It's such a massive project in a very heavily trafficked area that there are always going to be, mitigations and challenges there, but I've been impressed so far with all the work. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Dunbar. Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I attended the SR 37 meeting earlier in the month. It was talking a lot about what was in our report we just heard on it. The planning and environmental review was over all that had been proposed, evaluating it from cost, effectiveness, environmental impact. And we ended up where we started. Actually, it'll be an elevated causeway over the current location along the State Route 37. It's been a long process, and as staff pointed out, some of the proposals were, well, I don't know how they got there. One of them was to do away with 37 and go north on 12 to 29 to 12 to 121. That would effectively put about 100,000 cars a day through American Canyon if one added up all the Caltrans numbers on vehicular traffic. Part of the good news was it coming to Tulacay Creek. If you're familiar with that, is if you travel 37, it's right near the Infineon Raceway, near the railroad tracks. It's a very low spot on that highway. On extreme high tides we get periodically, the bay water is lapping at the edge of the asphalt on the road. When we get a heavy flood, then it's flooded. So the moving forward on the construction part of it, the first phase appears to be putting a bridge over that area to complete it. We didn't have any design elements to look at in great detail, but it's just the concept is there and to be explored further. It's going to take boatloads of money to be able to fix that, but it's over time. And it's idea starting with the most vulnerable portions of that road right now. But it was a good presentation. Just wanted to update you on that.
Thank you, Director Garcia. Are there any more comments or questions by the board? This is informational only. Do we have any public comment? Not seeing any. Very good. Thank you again, ladies. We appreciate it. Moving on to number 9, our consent items, item 9.1 through 9.6. Do any board members wish to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Okay, is there a motion to approve and a second?
So moved, Kraus. I'll second, Joseph.
Thank you. And Laura, roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Moving on to number 10, these are regular agenda items. We have 5 regular agenda items. The first 2, staff is seeking report. Starting with 10.1, we've got Transportation Fund for Clean Air, TFCA Program Manager Fund Project List for fiscal year end, FYE 2023. And Diana, you're going to be presenting this, pages 93 through 130.
Good afternoon, Chair Alessio and members of the board. I'm Diana Meehan, NVTA staff, and I'll be presenting the next 3 items, the first 2 of which are action items. This is 10.1, TFCA, Transportation Fund for Clean Air, fiscal year ending 2023 program of projects. TFCA grant program is a air district program funded by a $4 surcharge on vehicle registrations. It brings in approximately $22 million to the program annually. 60% of those funds are distributed through the regional fund program, mostly through competitive projects or programs, and 40% is distributed to the program manager fund in each county. And we are the program manager fund administrator in Napa County. We receive approximately $190,000 annually through the program. And every February, the board adopts the annual program expenditure plan. In April, the board opened a call for projects for fiscal years 2023 through 2025. And we received 4 project applications for fiscal 2023 only. In fiscal year 2022, I just want to point out the guidance in the program changed, allowing larger project applications, meaning that if a project application was eligible for greater than the amount that we have annually, you could earmark funds up to 3 years in advance for a larger project. Although those funds had to be programmed annually. We did not receive any large project applications in this cycle. During the May reporting period, we did have 1 project cancel that was programmed in 2022, returning $40,000 to the program. I do want to point out on the cover sheet, I do see a typo in the dollar amount, but it is correct on the page in the memo. Staff inquired with jurisdictions to see if there was another eligible project, and the city of Napa submitted an eligible project for the program. If we don't program these projects annually by November of each year, those funds could be distributed in another county. So that's always our goal, is to make sure that we program our projects in our county. On page 95 of the memo, it shows the proposed fiscal year ending 23 program of projects, the administrative cost and the project cost of $244,268. And the action before the board today is to approve the TFCA Program Manager Fund project list for fiscal year ending 2023. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Diana. Are there any questions from our board members? Not seeing any. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment? Not seeing any. Very good. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation?
So move Kraus.
Second, Joseph.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. On to 10.2, Diana is going to present this item. She is seeking approval. This is the project work order number 01 to NVTA agreement number 21 through 34 with DKS Associates for works associated with the countywide accessible transportation needs assessment. These are on pages 131 to 140. Diana.
Thank you, Chair Alessio. NVTA is undertaking a countywide assessment to address gaps in transportation for seniors and disabled populations. In late 2019, Napa County elected officials and Napa County NVTA staff, multiple representatives from various agencies representing senior and disabled organizations met to discuss the different and various gaps in transportation and needs for these particular populations. NVTA did agree to work with the county to identify these gaps and needs, and an effort was delayed due to competing priorities during the COVID-19 pandemic. In March of 2022, the County Napa Commission on Aging held a transportation needs summit in the town of Yountville, where multiple organizations and groups attended and discussed the different needs among these groups and agreed that this is a collective challenge to be addressed by all stakeholders. NVTA agreed to take the lead role in completing this countywide transportation needs assessment. This assessment will identify and analyze all existing services and programs that we currently have, evaluate gaps in marketing and communication strategies for services, identify transportation needs and gaps specific to seniors and individuals with disabilities, and develop transportation service alternatives and program recommendations, inclusive of feasibility assessment. The plan will develop vision, goals, objectives, policies, and a funding action plan. There'll be comprehensive community outreach and feedback during the entire process. We'll be bringing this before the board on multiple occasions during the whole course of the progress. The task is expected to take approximately 18 months. And our scope was released to 14 of our on-call planning consultant teams in August. We did receive just a single proposal, was reviewed by senior NVTA staff and deemed to address the requested task and needs. We did reach out to all the proposer or all the teams to inquire why they didn't submit proposals. Multiple of them did say that they were pretty tapped out. They were also short-staffed and thought that this was a very specialized type of project and that they would require sub-consultants that were also not available during the course of the planning process. So we did inquire to find out why there were no additional submittals. That said, when we reviewed this particular project, this is DKS Associates. You may remember them. They were the consultant that we worked with for our countywide transportation plan, and they are very qualified and have assembled a really good team to handle this task moving forward. So the request before you today is that you authorize the executive director or designee to execute and make minor modifications to work authorization number PWO01, attachment 1 in your package, to NVTA agreement number 21-34 with DKS Associates for the development and completion of the countywide accessible transportation needs assessment in an amount not to exceed $133,830. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Diana. And I attended that meeting that was in Yountville Community Center. This is something that there's a lot of eyes and a lot of interest in this area, especially when it comes to our vulnerable community members, older adults. So appreciate this. Is there any chance, is the 18 months kind of is that on the outer rim? Is there a chance this can be completed before then? It seems a little long.
Yeah, I would say so. We do have you'll hear next month about another countywide plan that we'll be working on. And so, yes, I think that that's doable. The preliminary project timeline from the proposer is showing approximately 10 months. We always like to allow a cushion. We're going to be heading into this and starting the kickoff right as the holidays begin. And in our past experience, it's been highly likely that we lose some of that time during November and December, kick back into gear in January. So yes, I would say there is a good chance that we could complete it in less time.
Very good. And I'm sure those other parties and organizations will be glad to hear that we're moving forward with this. Are there any board member questions or comments? Not seeing any. Is there any public comment? Okay, very good. Can we have a motion and a second to approve this item?
So move to approve, Garcia.
Second, Joseph.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Laura.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And Diana, you are also here for us for 10.3, which is an informational item. This is the View Commute Program update, pages 141 through 146.
Yes, this is for your information. And just to kind of go back in time, V-Commute is the NVTA's Travel Demand Management Program, what we call TDM. In late 2018, we rebranded this program, formerly known as Solano Napa Commuter Information. And when funding through 511.org was phased out of that program, we made a shift and developed our own program labeled V-Commute. And this was subsequent to our rebranding in 2016 with just sort of capitalizing on the Valley name. And that's where, if you're wondering, what is that V all about? That's what it's about. So it's Valley, if you're curious. We contracted with an organization, with a group called Ride Amigos. They're a this is a TDM platform that supports a whole range. You can go to the next slide, Laura, thanks. Whole range of support programs and management strategies and techniques. The platform can also provide benefits to employers. It can give them a single secure place for their commute program offerings. It can provide a trusted network for them to find carpools and van pools. It can assist employers with their distribution and support programs, such as Guaranteed Ride Home. It can also help distribute incentives through programs at different employers. There's also an app. You can go to the next slide, please. Sometimes there's confusion between the difference between the platform and the app. So V-Commute is actually our TDM program, and Ride Amigos operates the platform, and they also have an app associated with that. And essentially you can load it up on your smartphone just like you would with any other app. It simplifies working through your dashboard if you are a registered user, makes it easy for you to find rideshare partners through van pools and carpools. If you have an organization or work for an organization that does commute challenges, it's what we call gamification. This is to encourage that kind of behavior. Anything that can encourage you to try something other than commuting in a single occupancy vehicle. It also allows for distribution through something called Tango Card. I remember the days when we would give out rewards. We'd have to go and purchase a load of cards and pound the pavement throughout the county and distribute these things. It was a lot of staff time involved. Now in the modern world, we have Tango Card, which is all electronic. If you are to be rewarded through a points program, you'll receive an email with a link. You go to that link and you can cash in for things at Amazon, Whole Foods, Airbnb, or if you're feeling generous, one of many 501c3 nonprofit organizations or charities. So it's kind of a win-win for lots. To encourage registration in the program, next slide, please. We hold a commute challenge on an annual basis. And this is kind of a snapshot of the commute challenges that we held from 2019 to present. Of course, we did not hold one in 2020 for obvious reasons. But something interesting I want to point out to you, and even though we have somewhat low participation, you can see the registered users are slowly inching up. And we even got 18 new registrations in 2020. People were hearing about it somehow, some way, even though we were short-staffed and, you know, pretty swamped with other things and didn't put a lot of effort towards this. Plus, there was a lot of uncertainty with people ride sharing, issues with transit. And certainly these are all the things that we're promoting under this program. That said, you can go to the next slide, please, Laura. I want to show you what happened operationally. These were all the registered commute mode shares for each of the program years. Now this one for 2018-19, the year that we started, and I have 18, that's when we contracted with Ride Amigos in the late fall of that year, but we were, which would be considered operational, but it really kicked into gear in the spring. But as you can see, carpools were still pretty dominant back, you know, when we first kicked this into gear. It was pretty obvious that people were wanted a way to help find carpools. There was still a significant number of folks driving alone and a relatively high number of folks biking. Next slide, please. In the next operational year, carpools still dominant. Bikes started to go down a little bit, still about the same folks driving alone. And as the pandemic hit, you saw a big, huge drop in transit as you might expect. But look at walking and teleworking showing up for the first time. Walking really increased. So it's obvious that some folks decided to walk to work or were teleworking from home and then still logging trips to and from as walking. Next slide, please. 2020-21, of course, is the pandemic year, telework taking over the majority of trips. And you see the addition of vanpool, ferry, and driving alone. Some folks that were still making some of the long haul trips. Carpooling went down then, and as telework goes up, as you might imagine. Next slide, please. 2021-22, things started to open back up, and you'll see the new addition of carpools for 3 or more and hybrid electric carpools. Now, this is a new addition as Ride Amigos updated their platform. They also contracted with MTC regionally and opened up a new program called Merge. And Merge is working with all the other agencies throughout the region who are currently contracted with Ride Amigos. From the back end, you can opt into this program. If you're a member of vCommute and you choose to opt into Merge, you'll see carpools available to you across the region, across the county. So it was designed to expand options for people who are traveling across the region. And so that's why you're seeing the addition of some other types of carpools that are 3+, which are pretty common when people are traveling across county. Next slide, please. And then here we are today, this is July to current. Carpools are still relatively dominant. More folks are driving alone again, as you might imagine, and we don't see transit showing up at all, unfortunately. Next slide, please. What are some of the things coming down the pipe for vCommute? Now that we are fully staffed here at NVTA, we have a marketing and communications person on board. She's great. We're going to start hitting the pavement with some new ideas, and I would love to hear from the board on some of their ideas. We used to do transit promotions periodically, free ride days and things like that. We'll likely do some of those in the future. I know that we do a holiday bus. I'm not sure if that's in the works, but things that encourage folks to try this program and try alternative modes for getting around. E-bikes, and I'll be remiss to not mention the Napa Forward program has a new, very successful program for e-bikes that they're trying. They're providing vouchers up to $1,000 for folks registered in that program. And that's wine and hospitality users in the Up Valley areas to purchase an e-bike for commuting. And we also have a Bucks for Bikes program, a little bit smaller incentive. And we're going to be looking at the funds that we do have available in the program. You can see on your attachment what we have available and what we're working with. Like to increase the amount for Bucks for Bikes, which is currently at $100 or up to 60% of the purchase of your bike for commuter bike purchases. Van pools, believe it or not, are still quite popular among lots of groups, particularly large employer groups. We've had lots of inquiries through a few of our large employers, particularly Napa State Hospital. Commute with Enterprise, one of the benefits is that they provide initial incentives if you schedule with them for a van pool for the first year. MTC also has incentives, and we, NVTA, could, through our funding under this program, could offer some additional incentives just to kick those into gear. And most importantly, some outreach, just to make people aware that we have this program. What are the things available? One of the reasons that lots of folks say they don't use alternative commutes is they have concern about something coming up during the day where they may have to leave work in an emergency. Well, we've got a program for that. It's called Guaranteed Ride Home. If you register under V-Commute, you are automatically issued 4 of those a year. Your child falls, breaks their arm at school, hopefully not. You have to get there quickly. You can take an Uber, a Lyft, whatever way you choose to get there, rent a car, however you choose. If you've recorded your alternative trip that day, transit, carpool, rideshare, that trip will be reimbursed, and you have up to 4 of those a year. So it's just kind of a safety net for folks that want to know how would they get home in the event of a family emergency. So that's the answer to that. And that's actually a national program that occurs nationally. So those are some of the things we would like to start kick into gear. I managed to get through, I think, 3 pop-up events right before COVID with V-Commute. One was really successful down in American Canyon with the chamber. So we'll be reaching out to the chambers again to see if we can get in with some lunch and learn events and pop-up programs at various events that take place throughout the county. As Kate mentioned and others mentioned, we'll be at the electric vehicle event on Sunday, promoting this program and also riding transit. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about V-Commute.
Thank you. It's very exciting. Great update. Any questions by any board members or comments? Okay, Director Pedrosa.
And thank you very much for the presentation. And, we have some experience at this. We started a program very similar, working with Visit Napa Valley and the Napa Valley Vintners to look at mobility. The one thing we learned, and we were all stalled by the pandemic, right? But it wasn't really about the employers. It was about the employees. I think we need employer buy-in for them to see the benefit. But the data that always stuck with me is, how do you create a platform where employees can talk about the preferences and what the barriers are? So to me, I think this is part of our future. We need to provide different mode options, but I think a wholesale one size fits all, and I don't think that's what we're doing, or maybe we are. I don't think that's going to be as effective if we're targeting our workforce. And we were working with hotels and we were trying to figure out, where do the employees live? What type of work shifts do they have to create clusters of people that you could potentially incentivize to take a different mode of transportation? Do we have that ability to do this with this program?
We do. One of the things that was important to us when we made the shift with our partnership at Solano Transportation Authority through Solano Napa Commuter Information, at that time when we were partnered with STA, the program was essentially open and navigated through employers. And when we split apart, and they also contracted with Ride Amigos and have a similar program, as do all the North Bay counties, we wanted to make sure that any employee who wanted to participate had the ability to do that. So V-Commute is open to any employee or student in the county. College students can also participate in V-Commute.
Do we have bilingual preferences in terms of how we reach? Okay.
You can, yeah. So information is distributed in both languages. And that was one of the things that occurred. We had a whole bunch of print literature at the very beginning of the pandemic, and a lot of it didn't get distributed. So that's one of the program, one of the processes we want to go through. If people don't know what's available, it's not in their ears, it's not in their eyes, they won't navigate towards it. So it's important to us that we do have this information out in the public. As I mentioned, we have Valerie Wolson. She's our new public information officer, marketing. She has a marketing background. She's great at getting information out through the channels that people are looking at, social media, all those different various ways. And I think lunch and learn events, showing up at different places where employees are, you meet them where they are, don't ask for them to come to you, and just make them aware that this is available to them. And we find that's something that we've been missing.
And I think this is a great program, and I think we have to make them aware, right? But I think we also at some point have to have incentives to change behavior, because essentially we're trying to change behavior.
Exactly.
We're trying to make it convenient. So again, technology is part of the solution for the future, but I think we have to do a little. I think this is a great start. I'm a big fan, supportive. Maybe in the budget time, there's more money that we can put into this program. I definitely would be advocating for that because I think it's that critical. But we have to go a little deeper if we actually want to change behavior.
Agree.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Director Pedrosa. I like the free transit days too. It just give people an opportunity to see what they might be missing and that it's more convenient and accessible than they may think. So I do see we have a hand raised by Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely agree with what Director Prodos is talking about there, having been part of a program that was not successful. Some years back, we got 10 passenger vans for each jurisdiction, and it was supposed to be a commuter van. Never really understood or analysis of why it was not successful. But I look forward to this for all the reasons stated. And I think it's probably a level of it is marketing. One year I'd like to see if we had some data on it in terms of vehicle miles traveled, the reduction in that, as part of the climate action program. If you're getting less cars on the road vis-a-vis car sharing, ride sharing, and transit, I think that would be helpful information. I look forward to seeing how we're going to be marketing this program. I think it's a great solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Garcia. Are there any more other questions or comments by the board? Seeing none, do we have any public comment? I don't see any. Very good. Well, this is informational. Moving on to the next item, which is 10.4, Vine Transit update. And Rebecca, you're going to be presenting this informational item, pages 147 to 153.
Great. Thank you, Chair Alessio, members of the board. Rebecca Schenk, Program Manager for Public Transit here at NVTA. So we'll be reporting on today, since we didn't have an August board meeting, right, is the fourth quarter, mainly on the transit side of things, which means we ended on June 30th. So April, May, and June of 2022. So on the first slide, we've talked about this a lot. If you want to read more about the Yountville B ribbon cutting yesterday, you can read the register, and we hope to see you tomorrow at the St. Helena Butterfly Bus grand opening. In terms of where we're at, we did do full training with TransDev employees on the new BYD buses, because there's a lot more than just the operator driving the bus, right? It's a whole new electrical system. It's a whole new transmission, all types of things that they have never maybe really seen before. And so we had the Yountville B operating for the first time today. St. Helena shuttle will follow. And then in the city of Napa, you'll see this Hawk and the Owl coming out soon. And we also will have a second B bus once it gets delivered finally from the BYD facility down in Lancaster. So on the next page, it just shows you we did receive just last week on September the 13th, 2 new Proterra buses. Now, these are more of our standard 40-foot buses. You can see the interior and the exterior pictures there. They look more similar to what you see on the road now. And these will mainly be focused on the 11X. And the reason is that's a commute route. You've got morning, then you got time to charge, and then you've got the evening. So while these electric buses can't quite handle, say, a Route 10 or 11 yet, they can handle, we believe, we're going to find out, based upon modeling the things like the 11X. And so this will be our next unveilings. So what did we do in this last quarter? Again, fourth quarter of fiscal year 21-22 being from April through June of 2022. And so this looks at our historical local service and our passengers per revenue hour. So every hour out there, how many passengers do we have? So we're trending in the right direction, but we're still below what had been prior to the pandemic, kind of our minimum threshold. So on our local routes, this being in the city of Napa, a combination of the north, south, east, and west, and on demand, we're just above 6 passengers per revenue hour. So on the next slide, it kind of breaks out that 6 passengers per revenue hour out by the different local services. So you'll see what kind of drives that number higher are things like the Route N, which goes up to the Redwood Park and Ride and Rolfs Manor from here. Things with the Route E, which has limited service, really focused on the Camille Creek community school and the Shirtlift neighborhood, and what does not have high passenger right per revenue hour being our Vine on demand. But there are other benefits to that definitively, and you can take longer trips than you would be able to do on those other routes. You can maybe you would have had to take a prior, say, Route 1 to the Route 8 to do something, and now you're doing Vine on demand. But as long as we have that in place, that overall that 6.0, what I was talking about in the prior slide of all of our local demand on the passengers per revenue hour will remain low. So I will continue to kind of do this breakdown to kind of show you that difference. And we are basically with all of our fixed routes really at or above that, what the minimum had been pre-COVID at the 8 passengers per revenue hour. So on the next slide, you'll see again, kind of passengers per revenue hour on our regional routes. So the Route 10 to Calistoga, 11 to Vallejo, et cetera. And in this case, right, we are still below where we'd like to be, with the 10 and 11 performing the best on a passenger per revenue hour basis. So on the next slide, kind of shows our on-demand services, particularly in Calistoga, St. Helena, Yountville, and American Canyon. And I think with the unveiling of the electric buses, so we operate a white nondescript bus with a purple number on it in the St. Helena right now. And as we bring out the Butterfly, I really think that will help us on the passengers per revenue hour there. And same deal on the Yountville trolley side of things. We'll see that renamed, say, next quarter, but we'll be seeing, the trolley has not really been functional. So again, we're really driving a non-distinct bus out there. They may not realize it's the trolley, et cetera, but there's no missing that B. And so I think from a marketing perspective, we are also releasing at that same time just maps of where you can go as a tourist. For example, in St. Helena, just using the shuttle. It's so often only used maybe by school kids, and we don't want that to stop. But we think there's a whole other market, which we found in the Calistoga shuttle, that we need to be tapping into in St. Helena in terms of tourists. And we think that this mapping exercise will go a long way. So on the next slide, what you're going to see is just this total ridership change, right? What is it looking like going back to the prior quarter, which you'll see in gray, and then each of the prior years. And so you'll see we're trending in the right direction, say, when you look at, say, the fourth quarter of 2019-20 to 2021 to 2022, and you'll see positive growth there in the local on demand in the city of Napa, the Route 10, the Route 11, and the Route 29 in that direction. We do, though, still need to focus on the Route 21, because that's the case where we're not moving in the right direction. On the next slide, you'll see, again, ridership changes, looking at VineGo, especially as we saw more adult day programs open up this summer. We've definitely seen a big jump in our VineGo ridership, and again, moving in the right direction in Calistoga, St. Helena, and American Canyon, and hopefully with the B, once again, moving the right direction in Yountville. The kind of mitigating factor there is always going to be when the veterans home decides if they're going to open us back up to service, because that being roughly half, and I'm sure Mayor Dunbar knows the exact number, roughly half of the population there in Yountville that we're not able to serve to the best of our ability. And then on the next slide, it just talks about what it looks like on a total fiscal year. So it was the fourth quarter, right, end of the fiscal year. So this brings our breakdown for last year. We did 441,000 trips during that fiscal year. And so what did we change kind of, and what will you see in this next fiscal year and this next quarter? So on the next slide, what you see is the service changes we made on August 14th. August 14th was the week of going back to school. So right, corresponding again with school schedules, making some changes on the Route 29 that riders had requested, and then making the Route W, which goes west in the city of Napa, kind of bi-directional. So it's operating both clockwise and counterclockwise. So we'll see in that next quarter if that really drives our local ridership with having that in place. And then we always have to think about that next step. So on the next slide, you'll see with the Amola Park and Ride, and with that October 13th being that ground or ribbon cutting there, we were going to start serving the Amola Park and Ride with the Route 29 and the Route 11X, which will decrease our travel times there. But I wouldn't be surprised, we're also going to get some complaints, right? People that would come to the transit center to get on those routes are now going to have to go to the Amola Park and Ride. So there are definitely some winners and losers there. And then we'll be working with Translock, who we had approved to be our on-demand provider on updates to the Ride the Vine app. And I'm hoping with kind of this new app in place and really bringing us up to, advancing us 5 years from the last go, that we can make some changes in the city of Napa on demand to decrease those wait times. And then I think that's it tonight. Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Yep.
Do we have any questions or comments from our board? I see hands. Director Joseph.
So first of all, thank you for the report. And then second of all, going through the numbers, I couldn't help but notice the American Canyon Transit, the DUC as we used to call it, showing dramatic increase. And I'm trying to wonder, is that because we've added a second bus to that, or is it just increased demand, or what? Do you guys have any ideas on that?
Yeah, so I guess a combination of factors, really. So we were only operating, say, in fiscal year 1921 bus, so in the yellow, like the furthest back. So yes, you do see a jump basically when you go from 1 to 2, so that was helpful. But the idea that you're really getting up to like a pre-pandemic level, I think is attributable to how many students are riding the bus to school. So when you look at like, okay, what drives, what times is the American Canyon shuttle the most busy, right? It's really at those commute times. And then you see also just like regular trips that I see with special needs kids in American Canyon, that they're almost riding it daily, that they'll ride 10 people kind of a midday and then a mid-afternoon. They must be going from the high school and middle school to alternate locations and then back. So I see a lot of school movement there. But I mean, I think if you really wanted to get back up to pre-pandemic levels, if you had some service, your service is the most limited, I guess, of all of the services in terms of hours. And so that does make it quite efficient. But if you extended maybe from that 7:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday, potentially to a little later in the evening, or offered some weekend hours, that might also get you up right back up there. But yeah, you guys are the closest to pre-pandemic levels of anyone out there.
Well,
thank you.
Happy to hear that. Thank you.
And Director Dunbar.
Yeah, just 2 points to follow up. One, our citizen advisory rep to NVTA, Scott Owens, just reported out yesterday to our Yountville Town Council about the efficiency that the new Imola Park and Ride brings to the commuter time and consistency. He commutes daily down to the East Bay. And not only did he mention it's $5.50, which is a pretty incredible low price, but also not having to go into the transit center, divert from Highway 29 is going to save not only total minutes, but also the on-time arrivals and departures. And so he was praising that change ahead of time. Also, as it relates to the new B line, I'm wondering if, because we've already heard one, and there are probably going to be some more comments about, gee, we really enjoyed the previous vehicle because of its charming look, despite some of the maintenance challenges. Can we incentivize folks with some kind of climate action giveaways on the, maybe this happens at St. Helena, and when other EVs are deployed, maybe they board the bus and they're given NVTA, trinkets of some sort that are kind of in that same climate, climate action theme, whether it's, I'm not sure what it is. I know we got the very cool canvas bags that were branded. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking about. Very modest, not a high cost item, but something that is kind of a takeaway and a thank you for using the new EV buses. Just something to think about.
I like that idea, Director Dunbar, some swag, NVTA incentive fund swag. I'm looking at Valerie at the back.
Yes.
I could see she's smiling. And that leads to the question, Director Dunbar, do you have any other questions or comments? Okay,
Nope.
thank you. And that kind of leads well into my question and maybe even a potential future agenda item is with all these great programs and updates and projects, what is in this particular one, what are we doing in terms of marketing communications?
Yes, no, I mean, I think we're just kind of getting back into that realm, right? Being here in the office, there being these live events. So things like the ribbon cuttings this week, things like the American Canyon event on Sunday, events later in the month, finally at the Napa Valley College that we'll be attending once again. We were at the St. Helena Farmers Market this past Friday, right? I haven't been to the St. Helena Farmers Market in probably 3 years. So I think we're just getting back out there and unveiling, for example, this new set of maps that used to be something that like, oh, someone created in 2005 in GIS just to show like tourists where you could go, for example, in St. Helena and Yountville. Is getting us there. But right, we could do maybe as part of our next transit update, a little bit more detail on kind of our marketing and communications plan here moving forward. Because right, we do need to get people back out there, and we will try to do some notifications related to the Route 29 changes at the Mola Park and Ride. Because right, anyone, for example, like Scott Owen, who gets on at the Redwood Park and Ride, for example, this really is a win for them in trying to increase the number of people doing that. And then since we will be going to the Amola Park and Ride, I always think like, okay, how does what Diana is talking about in terms of carpooling correspond with what we're doing here on transit? And as simple as things like, okay, could we get the state hospital even to pick up at the Amola Park and Ride and bring people directly to the state hospital? Because that somehow on the 29, that's not people usually coming from Napa, right, going south. It's people that might live in a place like near the El Cerrito del Norte BART station or in Vallejo that are coming up to work at one of our major population centers there or one of our major employment centers there. So how do we make that connection as well?
Thank you. That's great. And Scott would be a great testimonial story. If someone from the register is watching or if Valerie wants to give him a call, I'm sure he'd be happy to help with that. I don't see any other questions or comments, so we can go ahead and move on. And this,
I did want to just make one comment, if I may. We are going to have a full-on transit workshop as your next board retreat. So look forward to that. Some of the things that we need to be tinkering with are similar to what is being discussed at the region. Fares are top of the list, and working with employers and schools to see what we can do to sort of break the barriers that prevent people from wanting to take transit. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about that summit. Thank you. Appreciate it. So our last item, which is also informational, is our director, Kate Miller, is going to give us a federal and state legislative update.
Great. This will be quick. There's, as you pointed out, is information only. The president signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a $750 billion authorization bill that will, among other things, provide about $1 billion for heavy duty clean vehicles, including zero emission transit buses. And so we're pretty excited about that. There's also another $3.2 billion in the bill that will float through the Federal Highway Administration for investments to establish neighborhood access and equity programs, improve safety, walkability, and affordable transportation in local communities. So that's a good project for the American Canyon improvement. So we'll be looking to that for those funds. On the state side, I just want to give you an update on legislation and where it is. The governor has until September 30th to sign or veto a bill, and those that we were watching and in some cases hopeful that did not make the cut. AB 1638 would have suspended the excise tax on fuels. That is good that it did not pass. That would have been an incredible blow to the revenues that we received for a number of things in Napa. AB 1944 did not make it out of the Senate Government and Finance Committee. This bill would have permanently allowed members of legislative bodies to participate in a Brown Act meeting remotely without disclosing members' location to the public. And, you know, mixed feelings about that, but as a staff member, it's kind of nice to see all of you here. SB 1049, that's a Dodd bill, and the board supported that. It would have diverted some of the federal National Highway Performance Program funds and promoting resilient operations and transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation program funds for resiliency projects. At the state level, the bill did not make it out of the Assembly Transportation Committee. SB 1050 would have established a toll road on Highway 37 to finance congestion relief and sea level rise management projects. The legislation was held in the Assembly Appropriations Suspense file and will not progress any further this legislative year and is not likely to be reintroduced next year, although we have an alternative mechanism, which is to work with the CTC to make Highway 37 a toll road. AB 2336 would have would have allowed certain cities to install speed safety systems in school zones and streets with high collision rates. The bill did not make it out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. SB 917 was the bill sponsored by Seamless Bay Area and would have directed MTC to work with regional transit operators to improve connectivity, among other things. The bill was held on suspense in the Assembly Appropriation and is not moving forward. AB 1909, which will make changes to provisions relating to operating bicycles on public roadways, namely Class 3 bicycles would be prohibited on public paths and trails. Class 3 vehicles are those bicycles are those that go up to 28 miles per hour and they're pedal assist or battery assist. It would further require motor vehicles to make a lane change if a lane is occupied by a bicycle, and the governor shockingly signed that into law. So it is now law. It'll be interesting to see how it shows up in statute. So AB 1919, which will create a 5-year youth-free transit pilot program, the program was contingent on budget appropriations and the governor vetoed that bill. AB 2622, sponsored by the California Transit Association, will extend the exemption of sales tax on zero emissions. This was signed into law. SB 852, this is a Dodd bill, which would create the Climate Resilience Districts Act to allow jurisdictions to create special districts to help fund climate resilience projects, and that was signed into law as well. SB 922 extends CEQA exemptions for certain transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects. That's the Wiener bill. And that was also signed into law. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. The Dodd bill, did you say that was SB 872 that was approved, the resiliency climate?
Yeah, is that is that a typo? I thought it was 852.
I was trying to keep up 852. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah,
just
that was
making
signed.
some notes. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Win some, lose some. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? I see we have a hand up for Director Joseph.
It's just a quick question on the RM3 court case. Reading your staff report kind of left me not sure if things are trending in the right direction or the wrong direction, or we're just kind of stuck in the middle. Can you comment or speculate?
Yes, we're all in that same exact space on that.
Okay.
So, I think that the court had initially decided that it would sort of take both that ruling and the MTC RM3 ruling together. And since the court pushed the other one down to the lower court or back to the lower court, it's still unclear where RM3 is at this point, but we'll keep you up to date. And I don't know if Director Pedrosa has anything more to add.
No, we're all trying to anticipate. I think the longer this goes, the more favorable it is, but we're all in suspense.
Okay, good. Because I'm assuming all that money is just sitting there accumulating no interest because it's in an escrow account or something. But if
it is actually, it's not being invested, it's just sitting there waiting for a court decision, which that's the unfortunate thing, that it's just sitting there.
So that's like millions of dollars just sitting there. Yikes. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director Joseph. And I don't see any other questions on that last item. Do we have any future agenda items, board members, that you want to propose?
I
Yes,
have
Director Joseph.
one, and I mentioned it to Director Miller a little earlier about considering youth representation on any of our boards or committees. We had some individuals that expressed interest in being party to being more involved, and we might be able to do it just through the existing positions. But I thought I would throw it out to see if the other directors are interested in ensuring a student representative on some of our boards or committees. So that's my throw out.
Why don't we provide an update on the efforts that Valerie is making to recruit new committee members and which committees have openings? How's
That
that?
sounds good.
Yeah,
That'll be a
good.
good baseline of, and see what we can do with that. Thank you.
Very good.
Sounds good. Thank you. And Director Ellsworth.
Thank you. I would just like to support Director Joseph's comments there. We recently in St. Helena created some youth representation coming to our city council. It was incredibly moving and incredibly valuable for us as a council to hear directly from this sector, or however you would like to describe it. I just think there's a tremendous value that we really fully didn't understand until they came forward and presented to us. So I would fully support that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any others. I kind of mentioned one, and that's just kind of an update on the marketing and communications plans with everything that's happening. I don't want to add too much to Valerie, so at her convenience when she has time, but that would be great. Maybe that this board members can help participate. I know a few board members are really good about social media and sharing the good works that they're doing in transportation in particular. So let's see here. We're ready to adjourn our meeting. So let's go ahead and adjourn at 3 o'clock sharp. Very good. And our next regular meeting will be October 19th, 2022. Thank you.